The opulent ballroom of the Rosemont Hotel in Chicago buzzed with anticipation. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. At the center of it all stood Olivia Martinez, a vision in white, her dark eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at the man she thought she'd spend the rest of her life with. "I'm sorry, Olivia," said Connor Blackwell III, his voice dripping with disdain. "But I can't go through with this farce any longer." The collective gasp from the guests seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Olivia's trembling hands clutched her bouquet of white roses, their thorns pricking her palms, but she barely noticed the pain. It paled in comparison to the agony tearing through her heart. "Connor," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What are you saying?" The tall, handsome man before her sneered, his perfectly chiseled features twisting into an ugly mask of contempt. "I'm saying that this wedding is off. Did you really think I'd marry someone like you? A nobody from the wrong side of the tracks?" Olivia felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her, judging, pitying, mocking. She wanted to run, to hide, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. How had her fairy tale come to this? As if reading her thoughts, Connor continued, his voice rising. "Oh, you played your part well, Olivia. The sweet, innocent girl who captured the heart of Chicago's most eligible bachelor. But did you really think you could keep up the charade forever?" He turned to address the stunned audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the real Olivia Martinez. The daughter of my family's former maid. A gold digger who thought she could social climb her way into our world." The cruel words sliced through Olivia like knives. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give Connor the satisfaction of seeing her break. "That's not true," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I love you, Connor. I've always loved you." Connor's laugh was cold and brittle. "Love? Please. What would someone like you know about love? All you've ever wanted was my money, my status. Well, guess what, sweetheart? The party's over." With a flourish, he produced a thick stack of papers from inside his tuxedo jacket. "This, my dear Olivia, is a bill for every penny I've ever spent on you. The clothes, the jewelry, the vacations. It's all here, itemized down to the last cent." Olivia's head spun. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. Any moment now, she'd wake up in Connor's arms, and he'd tell her it was all just a bad dream. But the nightmare continued. "You have 30 days to pay it all back," Connor said, his voice as cold as ice. "Or I'll see you in court." With that, he turned on his heel and strode towards the exit. The crowd parted before him like the Red Sea, leaving Olivia alone in a circle of whispers and judgmental stares. As the heavy doors slammed shut behind Connor, Olivia's legs finally gave way. She crumpled to the floor, her pristine white gown pulling around her like a defeated flag of surrender. In that moment, as the murmurs of the guests grew louder and more accusatory, Olivia felt utterly and completely alone. Everything she had worked for, every dream she had nurtured, lay shattered at her feet like the pieces of her broken heart. Little did anyone know, this was just the beginning of Olivia Martinez's story. For beneath the tears and humiliation, a fire was kindling, a fire that would soon set ablaze the very foundations of Chicago's elite society. 3 years earlier. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filled the cozy kitchen of the Martinez family's modest apartment in the outskirts of Chicago. Olivia, then just 22, hummed softly as she flipped pancakes on the worn stove. Her long dark hair was tied back in a messy bun, and she wore a faded uniform with a name tag that read Sunnyside Diner. "Mama, breakfast is ready," she called out, transferring the last golden brown pancake onto a chipped plate. Maria Martinez shuffled into the kitchen, her kind face etched with lines of worry and fatigue. Mija, you didn't have to do this. You should be resting before your shift. Olivia smiled, helping her mother into a chair. Nonsense, Mama. You work hard enough as it is. Besides, I have some news to share. As they settled in to eat, Olivia took a deep breath. I've been accepted into the nursing program at Chicago Community College. Maria's eyes widened, a mix of pride and concern flashing across her face. Oh, Olivia! That's wonderful news, but how will we afford it? Olivia reached across the table, squeezing her mother's hand. Don't worry, Mama. I've got it all figured out. I'll keep working at the diner, and I've applied for every scholarship I could find. We'll make it work. Maria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You're so much like your father, always dreaming big. He would be so proud of you. The mention of her late father sent a pang through Olivia's heart. He had passed away 5 years ago, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. But his words still echoed in her mind. Mija, education is the key that opens all doors. Never stop learning, never stop growing. As they finished their breakfast, a knock at the door startled them both. Olivia answered it to find Mrs. Blackwell, the wealthy woman whose house her mother cleaned, standing in the hallway. Good morning, Olivia, Mrs. Blackwell said, her voice clipped and refined. Is your mother ready? We have a lot to prepare for tonight's gala. Before Olivia could respond, Maria appeared behind her, already donning her coat. Yes, Mrs. Blackwell, I'm ready. As her mother hurried out, Olivia couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. The Blackwells lived in a world so far removed from their own, a world of galas and mansions while they scraped by paycheck to paycheck. Little did Olivia know that this day would mark the beginning of a journey that would bridge those two worlds in ways she could never have imagined. Later that evening, Olivia trudged home after a long shift at the diner, her feet aching and her uniform smelling of grease. As she approached their apartment building, she noticed a sleek black car parked outside, a stark contrast to the usual beat-up vehicles that lined their street. Her curiosity piqued, she quickened her pace. As she reached the building's entrance, the car's back door opened, and out stepped a young man who looked like he had just walked off the cover of a fashion magazine. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The stranger's piercing blue eyes widened slightly, a look of surprise and something else flashing across his chiseled features. Excuse me, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I'm looking for the Martinez residence. Would you happen to know where I might find it? Olivia blinked, momentarily stunned. Yes, actually. I'm Olivia Martinez. The young man's face broke into a dazzling smile. Ah, perfect. I'm Connor Blackwell. Your mother works for my family. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. This was Connor Blackwell? The son of the wealthy family her mother worked for? She had heard whispers about him, the golden boy of Chicago's elite, heir to the Blackwell fortune. But nothing had prepared her for the reality of his presence. Is everything all right? She asked, suddenly worried. Did something happen to my mother? Connor's smile faltered slightly. Oh no, nothing like that. It's just, well, there's been a bit of an emergency. We're hosting a charity gala tonight, and our caterer has fallen through at the last minute. Your mother mentioned that you work at a diner, and I was hoping, well, I know it's a lot to ask, but we're desperate. Would you be willing to help out? We'd pay you, of course. Olivia's mind raced. On one hand, she was exhausted from her shift and had studying to do. On the other, this could be an opportunity. Extra money for school, a chance to see how the other half lived, and, if she was honest with herself, a few more moments in the presence of this intriguing stranger. Yes, I can help, she heard herself say. Connor's relief was palpable. "You're a lifesaver, Olivia. Truly. The car's waiting, shall we?" As Olivia climbed into the backseat of the luxury car, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, she had no idea that this simple decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. The drive to the Blackwell mansion was like entering another world. As they passed through the gates of the expansive estate, Olivia couldn't help but gasp at the sheer opulence before her. Manicured lawns stretched as far as the eye could see, punctuated by elegant fountains and meticulously trimmed hedges. The mansion itself was a masterpiece of architecture, its windows glowing warmly against the twilight sky. Connor watched her reaction with amusement. "First time seeing the place?" Olivia nodded, feeling suddenly self-conscious in her diner uniform. "It's incredible." As they pulled up to the entrance, a flurry of activity greeted them. Staff members rushed back and forth, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres and making last-minute adjustments to decorations. "Come on," Connor said, offering his hand to help her out of the car. "I'll introduce you to our head chef, and he can get you set up." The next few hours were a whirlwind for Olivia. She found herself thrust into the heart of the gala preparations, her diner experience proving invaluable as she helped plate appetizers and organize serving trays. Despite the chaos, she couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. This was a world she had only ever dreamed of, and now she was right in the middle of it. As the evening wore on and guests began to arrive, Olivia caught glimpses of a life so different from her own. Women in designer gowns dripping with jewels, men in perfectly tailored suits discussing business deals worth millions. It was intoxicating and intimidating all at once. During a brief lull, she found herself alone in a quiet corner of the kitchen, catching her breath. That's when she heard raised voices coming from just outside the door. "Connor, darling, where have you been?" A woman's voice, sharp and commanding. "The Vanderbilts have been asking for you." "I've been helping with the catering crisis, Mother," Connor's voice replied, a hint of exasperation in his tone. "Well, that's all sorted now, isn't it? Come along, there are people you need to meet. Oh, and do try to spend some time with Amelia tonight. Her father's company would be an excellent acquisition for us." Olivia's heart sank a little at the mention of Amelia. Of course, someone like Connor would have a girlfriend, probably some stunning socialite with a trust fund and a pedigree to match. Just then, the kitchen door swung open, and Connor stepped in. His eyes lit up when he saw Olivia. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "For me? Why?" Connor grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Because, Olivia Martinez, I think it's time you got to experience this gala from the other side. How would you like to be my date for the evening?" Olivia's jaw dropped. "What?" "But I'm working. And look at me, I'm hardly dressed for a gala." Connor waved his hand dismissively. Details. I have connections with the best boutique in the city. One call, and we'll have you looking like Cinderella in no time. What do you say? Ready to crash a party?" Olivia hesitated. This was crazy, impulsive, potentially disastrous, and yet, the most exciting thing that had ever happened to her. She thought of her mother, of their tiny apartment, of all the doors that had always seemed closed to someone like her. Taking a deep breath, she met Connor's gaze and smiled. "All right, Prince Charming. Let's crash a party." What followed was like a dream. A whirlwind trip to an exclusive boutique that opened its doors just for them, a team of stylists transforming Olivia from a tired waitress into a vision of elegance. As she stared at her reflection, hair swept up in an intricate updo, makeup expertly applied, and wearing a breathtaking emerald gown that seemed to have been made for her, Olivia barely recognized herself. When she stepped back into the gala on Connor's arm, the room seemed to hush for a moment. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who was this stunning mystery woman? Ready? Connor whispered, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. Olivia took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and nodded. Ready. As they moved through the crowd, Olivia felt as though she had stepped into a fairy tale. She danced, she laughed, she engaged in conversation with some of the most influential people in Chicago. And through it all, Connor never left her side, his admiring gaze making her feel like the most beautiful woman in the room. But fairy tales, as Olivia would soon learn, often have hidden costs. And this magical night was just the beginning of a journey that would test her in ways she could never have imagined. As the evening wore on, Olivia found herself swept up in a world she had only ever dreamed of. The champagne flowed freely, the conversation sparkled, and everywhere she turned, there was another fascinating person to meet. Connor introduced her to business tycoons, philanthropists, and even a few minor celebrities, always with a proud smile that made her heart flutter. And who might this enchanting young lady be? A distinguished older gentleman approached them, his keen eyes appraising Olivia with interest. Connor's arm tightened slightly around her waist. Mr. Vanderbilt, allow me to introduce Olivia Martinez. Olivia, this is Harold Vanderbilt, one of Chicago's most respected businessmen and a dear family friend. Olivia extended her hand, praying it wasn't shaking. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Vanderbilt. The older man's handshake was firm, his smile genuine. The pleasure is all mine, my dear. Tell me, how did you and young Connor here meet? For a moment, panic flashed through Olivia's mind. What should she say? The truth seemed impossibly far from this glittering world of wealth and privilege. But before she could stammer out a response, Connor smoothly interjected. Olivia and I met through a mutual interest in healthcare reform. Did you know she's studying to become a nurse? Her insights on the challenges facing our city's hospitals have been invaluable. Mr. Vanderbilt's eyebrows rose with interest. Is that so? Well, we could certainly use more young people with a passion for making a difference. Have you considered joining our hospital board's youth outreach program, Ms. Martinez? And just like that, Olivia found herself engaged in a substantive discussion about healthcare accessibility and community programs. Her nervousness faded as she spoke about topics close to her heart, drawing from her own experiences and the challenges she'd seen in her community. As Mr. Vanderbilt excused himself, visibly impressed, Connor leaned in close. You were amazing, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. I think you just charmed one of the most influential men in Chicago. Olivia felt a blush creep up her cheeks, equal parts pride and something else, a growing attraction to the man beside her. I can't believe this is happening, she murmured, her eyes scanning the opulent ballroom. It feels like a dream. Connor's hand found the small of her back, guiding her towards a quieter corner of the room. Trust me, it's very real, he said, his blue eyes twinkling. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning. As they reached a secluded alcove, partially hidden behind a lush potted palm, Connor turned to face her. The sounds of the gala faded into the background, and for a moment, it felt as if they were the only two people in the world. Olivia, Connor began, his voice low and intense. I know we've only just met, but I can't shake the feeling that there's something special between us. Would you like to see me again? Outside of all this, I mean. Olivia's heart raced. Was this really happening? The golden boy of Chicago's elite, asking her out? It seemed too good to be true. And yet, the warmth in Connor's eyes, the gentle pressure of his hand on hers, it all felt so genuine. "I'd like that," she heard herself say, barely above a whisper. Connor's face broke into a radiant smile. He leaned in, and for a heart-stopping moment, Olivia thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pressed his lips to her cheek, the brief contact sending shivers down her spine. "It's a date, then," he murmured. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of champagne toasts, stolen glances, and the heady rush of possibility. As the last guests began to depart, Olivia realized with a start that she hadn't seen her mother all night. Guilt washed over her. How could she have forgotten? "Connor," she said, suddenly anxious. "I need to find my mother. She must be worried sick." Understanding dawned on Connor's face. "Of course. Let me help you look for her." They found Maria in the staff quarters, her face a mixture of relief and confusion as she saw her daughter approach, resplendent in her borrowed finery. "Olivia? Mija, what's going on? I've been so worried." Olivia rushed to embrace her mother, the disparity between her gown and Maria's simple uniform a stark reminder of the two worlds they inhabited. "I'm so sorry, Mama. I got caught up in, well, it's a long story." Connor stepped forward, his charm on full display. "Mrs. Martinez, I must apologize. It's my fault. Olivia's been away all evening. You see, we had a catering emergency, and your daughter was kind enough to step in and save the day. And then, well..." He gestured to Olivia's gown with a sheepish smile. "I'm afraid I insisted she enjoy the party as a guest. I hope you can forgive me." Maria's eyes widened as she took in Connor's appearance, recognition dawning. "Mr. Blackwell, of course. Thank you for looking after my daughter." As they bid farewell to the Blackwells and made their way home in a taxi Connor had insisted on paying for, Olivia's mind whirled with the events of the night. Her mother's silence was heavy with unasked questions. Finally, as they entered their small apartment, Maria spoke. "Mija, what happened tonight? Tell me everything." And so, curled up on their worn sofa, still wearing the stunning gown that seemed to belong to another world, Olivia recounted the evening's events. Her mother listened intently, her expression a mix of wonder and worry. "Oh, Olivia," Maria sighed when she had finished. "It sounds like a beautiful dream. But dreams like that, they can be dangerous for people like us." Olivia felt a flicker of defiance. "Why, Mama? Why can't I have a chance at that world? Connor doesn't care where I come from. He likes me for who I am." Maria's eyes filled with a sadness born of hard-earned wisdom. "I hope that's true, Mija. But be careful. The hearts of the rich can be fickle, and their world is not always kind to outsiders." As Olivia lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, her mother's words echoed in her mind. But they were drowned out by the memory of Connor's smile, the warmth of his hand in hers, and the intoxicating promise of a future brighter than she had ever dared to imagine. Little did she know that this night, magical as it had been, was just the first step on a path that would lead her to the heights of ecstasy and the depths of heartbreak. The weeks that followed were like something out of a fairy tale. Connor, true to his word, swept Olivia off her feet with a whirlwind romance that defied all her expectations. Their first date was a private tour of the Art Institute of Chicago after hours, where they strolled hand in hand through empty galleries, Connor sharing fascinating tidbits about the artworks and Olivia marveling at the beauty surrounding them. "How do you know so much about art?" Olivia asked, gazing up at a massive Monet. Connor's laugh was self-deprecating. "When you grow up with more money than you know what to do with, you end up learning about a lot of things. Art, wine, the stock market, sometimes I think I know everything except what really matters." There was a vulnerability in his voice that tugged at Olivia's heart. She squeezed his hand. "And what really matters?" He turned to her, his blue eyes intense. This connection, purpose, feeling alive. In that moment, surrounded by priceless masterpieces, Olivia felt like the most valuable treasure in the room. Their dates continued, each more extravagant than the last. A helicopter ride over the Chicago skyline, a weekend getaway to a vineyard in Napa Valley, front row seats at Hamilton. Olivia's head spun with the luxury of it all, even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that this couldn't last. But it wasn't just the lavish experiences that drew Olivia deeper into Connor's world. It was the quiet moments, the way he listened intently when she spoke about her dreams of becoming a nurse, the genuine interest he showed in her family and background, the vulnerability he displayed when sharing his own insecurities about living up to his family's expectations. "Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating under the weight of the Blackwell name," he confided one evening as they sat on a private yacht, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. "Everyone expects me to be this perfect heir, to take over the family business and keep the dynasty going. But what if that's not what I want?" Olivia's heart ached for him. "What do you want, Connor?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I want to make a difference. Not just by writing checks or attending galas, but by really changing people's lives." He turned to her, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "That's why I'm so inspired by you, Olivia. Your passion for nursing, your dedication to helping others, it's made me realize what I've been missing." As the weeks turned into months, Olivia found herself falling deeply, irrevocably in love. Connor introduced her to his world of privilege and power, but he also showed a genuine interest in hers. He visited her at the diner, charming her coworkers and leaving outrageously generous tips. He attended her college classes with her, sitting in the back and beaming with pride as she aced a difficult exam. And yet, despite the fairy tale romance, there were moments that gave Olivia pause. The flash of disapproval in Mrs. Blackwell's eyes when Connor brought her to family dinners. The whispers and sidelong glances from Connor's society friends at charity events. The way some people's smiles never quite reached their eyes when Connor introduced her as his girlfriend. "Don't let them get to you," Connor would say, pulling her close. "They're just jealous. You're worth 1,000 of them, Olivia." His words soothed her doubts, but they couldn't erase them completely. Olivia found herself straddling two worlds, the familiar, hardworking environment of her family and the diner, and the glittering, high-stakes arena of Chicago's elite. She was determined to prove that she belonged in both. It was a crisp autumn evening when everything changed. Connor had invited Olivia to a black-tie gala at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, an annual event that drew the cream of society. As they stepped out of the limousine, cameras flashing, Olivia felt a familiar flutter of nerves. "You look stunning," Connor whispered, helping her straighten the diamond necklace he had gifted her for the occasion. "Ready to show these stuffy old folks how it's done?" Olivia laughed, grateful for his ability to put her at ease. "As ready as I'll ever be." The gala was in full swing when they arrived, the grand hall filled with the city's most influential figures. Olivia recognized faces from magazine covers and news broadcasts, still amazed that she was now moving in these circles. As they made their rounds, greeting acquaintances and making small talk, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Connor seemed distracted, his usual easy charm replaced by a nervous energy she couldn't quite place. "Is everything okay?" she asked quietly as they moved towards the bar. Connor startled slightly, as if pulled from deep thought. "What?" "Oh, yes, everything's fine. Just thinking about some business matters." Before Olivia could press further, a hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to the small stage at the front of the room where the symphony's conductor was tapping a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "before we commence with tonight's performance, we have a special announcement. Mr. Connor Blackwell, if you would be so kind as to join us on stage? Olivia felt Connor stiffen beside her. He squeezed her hand, flashed her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and made his way through the parting crowd. As he climbed the steps to the stage, Olivia's heart began to race. What was going on? Connor took the microphone, his posture straight and confident, every inch the polished heir to the Blackwell fortune. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. As many of you know, the Blackwell Foundation has long been a supporter of the arts in Chicago. Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce that we will be doubling our annual contribution to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Applause rippled through the crowd, but Connor held up a hand, indicating he wasn't finished. But that's not the only announcement I have to make tonight. His eyes scanned the room, finally locking with Olivia's. Over the past few months, I've had the privilege of getting to know an extraordinary woman. Someone who has opened my eyes to a world beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. Someone who has shown me what it truly means to make a difference in people's lives. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Was this really happening? Olivia Martinez, Connor continued, his voice softening. Would you please join me on stage? On trembling legs, Olivia made her way through the murmuring crowd. She could feel the weight of hundreds of curious stares, hear the whispers of speculation. As she reached the stage, Connor extended his hand, helping her up the steps. And then, in front of Chicago's entire social elite, Connor Blackwell III dropped to one knee. Olivia, he said, his voice thick with emotion, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me a love I didn't know existed. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Time seemed to stand still. Olivia's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Joy, disbelief, love, and a tiny flicker of fear. It was all happening so fast. But as she looked into Connor's eyes, seeing the hope and love shining there, she knew her answer. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. The hall erupted in applause as Connor slipped a breathtaking diamond ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into a passionate kiss, and for a moment, Olivia forgot about the watching crowd, the whispers, the doubts. In that moment, there was only Connor, and the promise of a future brighter than she had ever dared to dream. As they turned to face the cheering audience, Olivia caught sight of Mrs. Blackwell in the front row. The older woman's face was a mask of politeness, but in her eyes, Olivia saw something that sent a chill down her spine. It was a look of cold, calculated determination. And in that instant, Olivia knew that her fairy tale was far from over. In fact, the real test was only just beginning. The months leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity, each day bringing new challenges and revelations. Olivia found herself thrust into a world of wedding planners, designer fittings, and etiquette lessons, all under the watchful eye of Constance Blackwell, Connor's formidable mother. No, dear, Constance would say, her voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. The salad fork goes on the outside. Honestly, didn't your mother teach you anything about proper table settings? Olivia bit her tongue, reminding herself that this was all part of the package. She was marrying into one of Chicago's most prominent families, and there were expectations to be met. Still, the constant scrutiny and thinly veiled criticism wore on her. Connor, for his part, seemed oblivious to his mother's behavior. He was caught up in the excitement of their engagement, showering Olivia with gifts and whisking her away on romantic getaways whenever the pressure became too much. Don't let my mother get to you, he'd say, massaging Olivia's shoulders as they lounged in a private villa in Santorini. She's just set in her ways. She'll come around once she sees how happy you make me. Olivia wished she could share his optimism. But with each passing day, she felt the divide between her old life and her new one growing wider. Her mother's words from that first night echoed in her mind. The hearts of the rich can be fickle, and their world is not always kind to outsiders. It wasn't just Constance who made Olivia feel like an outsider. There were the society ladies who would fall silent when she entered a room, only to burst into barely concealed giggles when she left. The business associates of Connor's father who would look right through her at parties, as if she were invisible. And then there was Amelia Vanderbilt. Amelia was everything Olivia was not, born and bred in high society, with a pedigree as long as her expertly highlighted hair. She had also, Olivia learned, been widely considered to be Connor's eventual match before Olivia came into the picture. "Oh, Olivia, darling," Amelia drawled at a bridal shower thrown by Connor's sister, her voice saccharine sweet. "That ring is just adorable. Did Connor let you pick it out yourself?" How modern of him. Olivia forced a smile, even as she felt her cheeks burning. "Actually, Connor chose it himself. He said it reminded him of the stars the night we first met." Amelia's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. "How romantic." "You know, Connor always did have a soft spot for charity cases." The words stung, but Olivia refused to let it show. She was determined to prove that she belonged in this world, that her love for Connor was real and lasting. But as the wedding day drew nearer, doubts began to creep in. Was she really ready for this life? Could she truly be happy in a world so different from everything she had known? It was during one of her increasingly rare visits home that these doubts came to a head. Olivia sat at the small kitchen table with her mother, the elegant engagement ring on her finger a stark contrast to the chipped formica surface. "Mija," Maria said softly, reaching out to take her daughter's hand. "Are you happy?" The question caught Olivia off guard. Was she happy? She should be, shouldn't she? She was engaged to a man she loved, about to join one of the most prestigious families in Chicago. She had opportunities she'd never dreamed of, a future filled with promise and privilege. And yet, I don't know, Mama, Olivia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Everything's happening so fast. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself in Connor's world. Maria's eyes filled with understanding and a hint of sadness. Oh, Mija. Marriage is never easy, but marrying into a different world, it's a challenge few can truly understand. Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes. I love Connor, I really do. But his family, his friends, sometimes I feel like I'm constantly being judged, like I'll never be good enough for them. Her mother squeezed her hand gently. Olivia, listen to me. You are more than good enough. You are kind, intelligent, and hardworking. If they can't see that, it's their loss. But you need to ask yourself, can you be true to who you are in that world? Can you build a life there without losing the essence of what makes you, you? The questions hung in the air, heavy with implications. Olivia didn't have answers, not yet. But as she left her childhood home that evening, she felt a renewed determination. She would make this work, not by becoming someone else, but by staying true to herself. Little did she know, the greatest test of that resolve was yet to come. The week before the wedding was a frenzy of last-minute preparations. Olivia found herself swept up in a whirlwind of final fittings, seating chart adjustments, and rehearsals. Through it all, Connor was her rock, his excitement infectious. Just think, he'd whisper, pulling her close whenever they had a moment alone. This time next week, you'll be Mrs. Blackwell. We'll be starting our life together, Olivia. Can you believe it? And despite her doubts, despite the lingering feeling of being an outsider, Olivia felt her heart swell with love and anticipation. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? A life with Connor, a chance to make a difference in the world with the resources and connections of the Blackwell name behind her. It was 2 days before the wedding when everything changed. Olivia had just finished a final fitting of her wedding dress, a stunning creation of silk and lace that cost more than her mother made in a year, when she received a cryptic text from Connor. "Meet me at the office. Urgent." Concern flooded through her. Connor never asked her to come to the Blackwell corporate offices. What could be so urgent that it couldn't wait until they got home? When she arrived, Connor's assistant ushered her into a conference room. Connor was there, pacing back and forth, his usually perfectly coiffed hair in disarray. "Connor? What's wrong?" Olivia asked, her heart racing. He turned to her, his face a mask of anguish. "Olivia, God, I don't know how to say this." Fear gripped her. "Just tell me, Connor. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." He ran a hand through his hair, unable to meet her eyes. "It's the company. We're in trouble. Big trouble." Olivia felt her world tilt. "What do you mean? I thought Blackwell Industries was doing better than ever." Connor laughed bitterly. "That's what we wanted everyone to think. But the truth is, we've been hemorrhaging money for years. Bad investments, market downturns, a few key projects that went south, it's all coming to a head now." Olivia's mind raced, trying to process this information. But your family's fortune, all the charity work, the gala." "Smoke and mirrors," Connor said, his voice hollow. "We've been keeping up appearances, but it's all built on sand. And now..." He paused, swallowing hard. "Now the SEC is investigating. There are rumors of insider trading, of cooked books. If this gets out, it's not just the company that's finished. My whole family could face criminal charges." Olivia felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. This couldn't be happening, not now, not when they were so close to their happy ending. "What can we do?" she asked, reaching for Connor's hand. He pulled away, and the gesture sent a chill through her. There's only one way out. One way to save the company, to save my family." A sense of dread settled over Olivia. "What is it?" Connor finally met her gaze, his blue eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and determination. "We need an infusion of cash, and quickly. Clean money, from a source the SEC can't question." Olivia's brow furrowed. "But where would you get that kind of money on such short notice?" Connor took a deep breath. "The Vanderbilts." The name hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Olivia felt her heart constrict. The Vanderbilts? But what does that have to do with? And then it hit her. Amelia Vanderbilt. Connor's former almost fiancé. The woman from one of the wealthiest families in Chicago. "No," Olivia whispered, taking a step back. "Connor, please tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying." Connor's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. I never wanted it to come to this. But if I marry Amelia, her family will invest in Blackwell Industries. It'll look like a merger of old money families, nothing suspicious. It's the only way to save everything my family has built." Olivia felt as if she'd been plunged into icy water. This couldn't be real. It had to be a nightmare. But what about us? Our wedding is in 2 days." Connor stepped forward, reaching for her, but Olivia recoiled. "Olivia, please. You have to understand. This isn't just about me. It's about my parents, my sister, all the people who work for Blackwell Industries. Thousands of jobs are at stake. I can't let them all suffer because of my father's mistakes." Tears streamed down Olivia's face. "And what about my suffering, Connor? What about the promises you made to me? Was any of it real? Pain flashed across Connor's features. Of course it was real. Olivia, I love you. I always will. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes we have to make impossible choices for the greater good. Olivia felt something inside her harden. The greater good. How many times had she heard that phrase from Connor's parents, from their society friends? Always used to justify actions that benefited the wealthy and powerful, never those who truly needed help. The greater good, she repeated, her voice cold. And I suppose publicly humiliating me, breaking my heart, that's all for the greater good too? Connor flinched. I never meant to hurt you. I thought if I explained, you'd understand. That maybe we could still be. Be what, Connor? Olivia interrupted, anger rising to replace her shock and pain. Friends? Secret lovers while you play house with Amelia? How dare you? She turned to leave, but Connor caught her arm. Olivia, please. I'm begging you. Don't tell anyone about this. If word gets out before the Vanderbilt deal is finalized, everything will fall apart. I know I have no right to ask, but please, for old time's sake. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him. The man she had thought she knew, the man she had been prepared to spend her life with. Now, she saw him clearly for the first time. Weak. Selfish. A product of a world that valued money and status above all else. Goodbye, Connor, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. I won't say anything. Not for you, but for all the innocent people who would be hurt if Blackwell Industries collapsed. But know this, I see you now, truly see you. And I pity you. With that, she walked out of the conference room, out of the Blackwell offices, and out of the life she had thought was her fairy tale ending. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of pain and disbelief. Olivia moved through them as if in a trance, packing her things, canceling what she could of the wedding arrangements, trying to figure out how to piece her life back together. Her mother, bless her heart, didn't ask questions. She simply held Olivia as she cried, murmuring soothing words in Spanish and promising that everything would be okay. But how could it be okay? How could anything ever be okay again? It was the morning of what should have been her wedding day when Olivia's phone buzzed with a news alert. With trembling fingers, she opened it and felt her world tilt on its axis once more. Breaking news, Blackwell Vanderbilt engagement announced. Society's golden couple to wed in surprise ceremony today. The article was filled with glowing praise for the union of two of Chicago's most prestigious families. Connor and Amelia beamed from a photograph, looking every inch the perfect couple. The Blackwell and Vanderbilt patriarchs were quoted, speaking of strengthened business ties and bright futures. There was a single line, near the end of the article, that mentioned the unfortunate cancellation of Connor's previous engagement due to irreconcilable differences. Irreconcilable differences. As if her love, her dreams, her entire future could be summed up in such a cold, impersonal phrase. Olivia felt something snap inside her. The pain, the hurt, the betrayal, it all crystallized into a hard, burning core of anger and determination. She had been naive, yes. Blinded by love and the allure of a world so different from her own. But she was not weak. She was not someone to be discarded, to be brushed aside as an inconvenient footnote in the grand narrative of the Blackwell dynasty. With hands that shook only slightly, Olivia began to get dressed. Not in sweats or old pajamas, but in the designer outfit she had chosen for her honeymoon departure. Her mother watched from the doorway, concern etched on her face. Mija, what are you doing? Olivia met her mother's gaze in the mirror as she applied her makeup with practiced precision. I'm going to a wedding, Mama. Maria's eyes widened. Olivia, no. Don't do this to yourself. It will only bring more pain. But Olivia's mind was made up. I have to do this, Mama. Not for Connor, not for revenge, but for me. I need closure. I need to face this head-on, or I'll never be able to move past it. Her mother studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But I'm coming with you. Together, they made their way to St. Michael's Church, where Chicago's elite were gathering to witness the society event of the year. Olivia felt the stares, heard the whispers as she walked up the steps. Let them talk. Let them wonder. She was done hiding, done feeling ashamed. As they slipped into the back of the church, the wedding march began to play. Olivia watched, her heart pounding, as Amelia glided down the aisle, a vision in white. Connor stood at the altar, handsome as ever in his tuxedo, but Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. The ceremony proceeded, a grand spectacle of wealth and tradition. And then, just as the priest asked if anyone had reason why these two should not be wed, Olivia felt a strange calm settle over her. She stood. The rustle of expensive fabric filled the air as hundreds of heads turned to look at her. She saw shock on some faces, cruel amusement on others. Connor's face had gone pale, his eyes wide with panic. I have something to say, Olivia said, her voice clear and strong. The priest, flustered, began to speak, but Amelia's father, Harold Vanderbilt himself, held up a hand to silence him. His keen eyes were fixed on Olivia, a hint of, was that respect? In their depths. Let her speak, he said. Olivia took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define her future. I'm not here to stop this wedding, she began, and saw Connor's shoulders sag with relief. I'm not here for revenge, or to cause a scene. I'm here because I believe in the truth, and I believe that the truth should be known before any vows are exchanged. She paused, looking around the church. These people, with their designer clothes and carefully cultivated images, they had always made her feel small, inadequate. But not anymore. Many of you know me as Connor's former fiancé, she continued. What you don't know is why our engagement ended. It wasn't because of irreconcilable differences, or because I wasn't good enough for the Blackwell name. It ended because of lies, manipulation, and a web of financial deceit that goes to the very heart of Blackwell Industries. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Connor started forward, but his father grabbed his arm, holding him back. Olivia's gaze locked with Connor's. I promised I wouldn't tell, she said softly. For the sake of the innocent people who might be hurt. But I've realized that keeping quiet, protecting those who abuse their power and privilege, that's not noble. It's not for the greater good. It's cowardice. She turned to address the entire congregation. Blackwell Industries is on the verge of collapse. This marriage, this merger with the Vanderbilts, it's not about love. It's a desperate attempt to secure an influx of cash before federal investigators uncover years of financial mismanagement and possible criminal activity. The church erupted in chaos. People were shouting, demanding answers. Amelia had sunk onto a pew, her face ashen. Connor's father was on his phone, barking orders to someone. And through it all, Connor stared at Olivia, his expression a mixture of betrayal, anger, and, was that a flicker of admiration? Olivia wasn't done. I loved Connor Blackwell. I thought he loved me. But in the end, he chose his family's reputation, his comfortable life of privilege, over honesty and real love. And in doing so, he showed me exactly who he is, and who I don't want to be. She turned to Amelia, who was watching her with wide, shocked eyes. Amelia, I know we've had our differences. But you deserve better than this. You deserve someone who chooses you for you, not for your family's money or influence. We all deserve better than a world built on lies and manipulation." With that, Olivia reached up and unclasped the diamond necklace Connor had given her, the one she had sentimentally worn one last time. She let it fall to the floor with a clatter that echoed through the suddenly silent church. "I came here today to close a chapter of my life," she said, her voice strong and clear. "To face my pain and move beyond it. But I realize now that this isn't just about me. It's about all of us. It's about choosing truth over comfort, integrity over image, real love over convenience. It's about being brave enough to stand up and say no more." She looked around the church one last time at the sea of shocked and thoughtful faces. "Thank you for listening. I wish you all the clarity and courage to live your truths, whatever they may be." With that, Olivia turned and walked out of the church, her head held high. As the heavy doors closed behind her, she heard the explosion of voices, the beginning of what would surely be a scandal that would rock Chicago's high society to its core. But Olivia didn't look back. For the first time in months, she felt truly free. The future stretched out before her, uncertain but full of possibility. She had lost a fairy tale, yes. But she had found something far more valuable: her own voice, her own strength, and a newfound determination to make a difference in the world on her own terms. As Olivia descended the church steps, the warm Chicago sun on her face felt like a benediction. Her mother was at her side, a steadying presence in the storm of emotions swirling within her. "I'm proud of you, Mija," Maria said softly, squeezing her daughter's hand. "You stood up for what's right, no matter the cost. Your father would be so proud." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes at the mention of her late father. How she wished he could have been there to see her find her strength. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you." As they reached the sidewalk, a sleek black town car pulled up beside them. The back window rolled down, revealing the stern face of Harold Vanderbilt. "Ms. Martinez," he said, his voice gravelly but not unkind. "I wonder if I might have a word?" Olivia hesitated, glancing at her mother. Maria nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, Mija. I'll wait for you." Taking a deep breath, Olivia slid into the backseat of the car. Mr. Vanderbilt signaled to his driver, and they pulled away from the curb, leaving the chaos of the interrupted wedding behind. For a long moment, neither spoke. Olivia braced herself for anger, for threats, for the full force of one of Chicago's most powerful men to come crashing down on her. Instead, Mr. Vanderbilt surprised her. "That was quite a speech you gave in there, young lady. Brave. Foolish, perhaps, but brave nonetheless." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I did what I believed was right, Mr. Vanderbilt. I'm prepared to face the consequences." The older man's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Are you now? And what consequences do you imagine those might be?" I'm not sure," Olivia admitted. "I suppose the Blackwells might try to sue me for defamation. Or use their influence to make sure I never work in the city again." Mr. Vanderbilt nodded thoughtfully. "They might try. But I don't think they'll get very far. You see, Ms. Martinez, what you did in there, it was reckless, yes, but it was also illuminating. You confirmed suspicions that have been circulating in certain circles for some time now." Olivia's eyes widened. "You knew? About Blackwell Industries?" "We had our suspicions," Mr. Vanderbilt said. "But no concrete proof. Your little revelation in there has set quite a few wheels in motion. The SEC will be very interested in what comes to light in the coming weeks." He paused, studying her intently. "Tell me, Ms. Martinez. What are your plans now?" Olivia blinked, caught off guard by the question. I'm not sure. Finish my nursing degree, I suppose. Try to rebuild my life. Mr. Vanderbilt nodded. A noble profession, nursing. But I wonder, have you ever considered a career in business? Business? Olivia echoed, confused. Mr. Vanderbilt, I don't have any experience in. He held up a hand to stop her. Experience can be gained, Ms. Martinez. What can't be taught is integrity, courage, and the ability to stand up for what's right, no matter the personal cost. Those are qualities I value highly in my employees. Olivia's mind reeled. Was he offering her a job? I don't understand, she said carefully. Why would you want to help me? Mr. Vanderbilt's expression softened slightly. Let's just say I have a vested interest in fostering young talent that isn't afraid to speak truth to power. The business world needs more people like you, Ms. Martinez. People who understand that true success comes not from manipulation and deceit, but from honesty and hard work. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a business card. Think about it. If you're interested, give me a call. We'll find a place for you at Vanderbilt Enterprises. A place where you can make a real difference. As Olivia took the card, her fingers trembling slightly, she felt as though she were standing on the precipice of something monumental. A door had closed behind her, yes, but another was opening, one that led to possibilities she had never even imagined. Thank you, Mr. Vanderbilt, she said softly. I'll think about it. The car pulled up alongside her mother, who was waiting anxiously on the sidewalk. As Olivia stepped out, Mr. Vanderbilt called after her. Oh, and Ms. Martinez? Whatever you decide, I hope you'll consider testifying when the time comes. Your story could be crucial in bringing some long overdue changes to the way business is done in this city. Olivia nodded, a sense of purpose settling over her. I'll do whatever I can to help, Mr. Vanderbilt. You can count on that. As the car pulled away, Olivia turned to her mother, who was looking at her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Mija, what was that about? Olivia took a deep breath, feeling as though she were taking her first real breath in months. It's a long story, Mama. But I think it might be the beginning of something important. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. True to Mr. Vanderbilt's predictions, the SEC launched a full-scale investigation into Blackwell Industries. Olivia found herself at the center of a media storm, her face splashed across newspapers and TV screens as the whistleblower who had exposed one of Chicago's most powerful families. It wasn't easy. There were threats, both veiled and overt. Reporters camped outside their small apartment, hoping for a statement or a candid photo. Olivia received everything from marriage proposals to death threats in her suddenly overflowing inbox. Through it all, she held her head high. She gave measured, thoughtful interviews when approached by reputable journalists. She cooperated fully with the SEC investigation, providing every scrap of information she had. And she leaned heavily on the unwavering support of her mother and a small circle of true friends who stood by her through the chaos. Connor, she heard, had fled to Europe in the wake of the scandal. His father was facing multiple federal charges, and Blackwell Industries was in freefall. Olivia felt a pang of sadness for the innocent employees caught in the crossfire, but she knew that in the long run, exposing the truth was the right thing to do. 3 months after that fateful day at the church, Olivia found herself standing in front of the mirror in a smart business suit, preparing for her first day at Vanderbilt Enterprises. She had decided to take Mr. Vanderbilt up on his offer, deferring her nursing studies for a year to explore this unexpected path. As she pinned on her employee badge, Olivia barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Gone was the wide-eyed, naive girl who had been swept off her feet by Connor Blackwell. In her place stood a woman who had faced her worst fears, stood up for her principles, and emerged stronger for it. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Good luck today, Mija. Remember who you are and where you came from. I love you." Olivia smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for the unwavering support that had carried her through the darkest days. She typed back a quick "I love you too, Mama. Thank you for everything." As she stepped out of her apartment building, Olivia was surprised to see a familiar face waiting for her on the sidewalk. Amelia Vanderbilt, looking decidedly less polished than Olivia had ever seen her, stood nervously clutching a takeout coffee cup. "Olivia," Amelia said, her voice lacking its usual haughty tone. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to catch you before work." Olivia approached cautiously. "Amelia, this is unexpected." The other woman thrust the coffee cup towards her. "Peace offering? I got your order from Clara in HR, vanilla latte, right?" Touched by the gesture, Olivia accepted the cup. "Thank you. But why?" Amelia took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. The way I treated you, the things I said. I was cruel and judgmental, and you didn't deserve any of it." Olivia was stunned. This was the last thing she had expected. "Amelia, you don't have to." "No, I do," Amelia insisted. "What you did that day at the church, it was incredible. Terrifying and shocking, yes, but also incredibly brave. You saved me from making a huge mistake, and you opened my eyes to a lot of things I'd been willfully ignoring." She paused, looking down at her designer shoes. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months. About the kind of person I want to be, the kind of life I want to lead. And I realized. I want to be more like you, Olivia. Strong, principled, unafraid to stand up for what's right." Olivia felt a sudden rush of empathy for the woman before her. How many times had she felt lost and unsure in Amelia's world? "It's not easy," she said softly. "Finding your own path, I mean. But it's worth it." Amelia nodded, meeting Olivia's gaze with newfound respect. "I'm starting to see that. Anyway, I just wanted you to know. I'm rooting for you. And if you ever need an ally at Vanderbilt Enterprises, well, you've got one." As Amelia turned to leave, Olivia called after her. "Amelia? Thank you. For the coffee, and for this. It means a lot." The two women shared a smile of understanding before Amelia disappeared into the bustling Chicago morning. Olivia stood for a moment, sipping her latte and marveling at how much could change in just a few months. With a deep breath and a squared set to her shoulders, Olivia set off towards her new future at Vanderbilt Enterprises. She didn't know exactly what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: she was ready to face them head-on, with integrity and determination. 5 years later. The Chicago skyline glittered in the early evening light as Olivia Martinez stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office. At 32, she had become the youngest vice president in Vanderbilt Enterprises history, heading up their newly formed ethics and community outreach division. The past 5 years had been a whirlwind of hard work, late nights, and steep learning curves. But Olivia had thrown herself into her new career with the same determination and integrity that had brought her to this point. She had proven herself not just capable, but exceptional, earning the respect of colleagues and competitors alike. A knock at her office door pulled her from her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning from the window. Clara, her assistant, poked her head in. "Ms. Martinez? Your 5 o'clock is here." Olivia smiled. "Thanks, Clara. Send them in, please." As Clara retreated, Olivia straightened her blazer and moved to stand behind her desk. A moment later, the door opened again, admitting a group of nervous-looking young men and women. "Welcome," Olivia said warmly, gesturing to the chairs arranged in front of her desk. "Please, have a seat." As the group settled in, Olivia took a moment to study them. Fresh-faced college graduates eager to make their mark on the world. She saw in them echoes of herself from not so long ago, the mix of ambition and uncertainty, the desire to prove themselves. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "As you know, Vanderbilt Enterprises is launching a new mentorship program for promising young professionals from diverse backgrounds. You've all been selected as our first cohort, and I couldn't be more excited to work with each of you." She paused, noting the mix of excitement and nervousness on their faces. "Before we get started, I want to share a story with you. A story about a young woman who thought she had found her fairy tale, only to discover that real life, and real success, is about so much more than marrying a prince or fitting into someone else's world." As Olivia recounted her journey, from starry-eyed fiancé to whistleblower to respected business leader, she saw recognition dawn in some of their eyes. A few of the older ones had probably read about the Blackwell scandal in the news. "The point of this story," Olivia concluded, "is not to dwell on past mistakes or hardships. It's to show you that your background, your struggles, the things that make you different, these are not weaknesses to be overcome. They are strengths to be embraced." She leaned forward, her voice passionate. "In this program, and in your careers, you'll face challenges. You'll encounter people who underestimate you, who try to make you feel like you don't belong. But I'm here to tell you that you do belong. Your voices, your perspectives, your experiences, they are exactly what the business world needs." Olivia saw hope kindling in their eyes, the same hope she had felt when Harold Vanderbilt had offered her a chance all those years ago. "My door is always open to you," she said. "Not just for business advice, but for support, encouragement, or just a sympathetic ear. Together, we're going to change the face of business in this city, and beyond." As the meeting wrapped up and the young professionals filed out, energized and inspired, Olivia felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was why she had worked so hard, why she had pushed through every obstacle. Not for the corner office or the impressive title, but for the chance to make a real difference in people's lives. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Dinner still on for tonight, Mija? I'm making your favorite." Olivia smiled, feeling a rush of love and gratitude. No matter how high she climbed in the business world, she never forgot where she came from or the values that had gotten her here. She quickly typed back, "Wouldn't miss it for the world, Mama. Be there at 7. As she gathered her things to leave, Olivia's eyes fell on a framed photo on her desk. It was from the opening of Vanderbilt Enterprises' new community health clinic, a project she had spearheaded. In the photo, she stood cutting the ribbon, flanked by Harold Vanderbilt and, surprisingly, Amelia. Over the years, Amelia had become not just an ally, but a friend. She had thrown herself into philanthropic work, using her family's resources and connections to support causes she believed in. The two women had found common ground in their desire to give back to the community, and their collaboration had led to some of Olivia's proudest achievements. As Olivia headed out of her office, she passed the wall of employee photos in the lobby. Her own portrait hung there, alongside those of her colleagues. But what made her pause was the plaque beneath it, engraved with the company's new motto, one she had suggested herself. "Success with integrity, embracing diversity, empowering change." She smiled, feeling a sense of pride and purpose wash over her. This was her legacy, not the fairy tale romance she had once dreamed of, but something far more meaningful and lasting. As Olivia stepped out into the Chicago evening, she took a deep breath of the city air. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, the first stars just beginning to twinkle above the skyscrapers. She felt a sense of possibility, of adventures yet to come. Her journey had been far from easy, filled with heartbreak and challenges she could never have anticipated. But standing here now, successful on her own terms and using her position to lift others up, Olivia knew she wouldn't change a thing. She had lost a fairy tale, yes. But she had gained a life of purpose, integrity, and real, lasting happiness. And that, Olivia realized, was the greatest happily ever after she could have ever wished for. As she hailed a taxi to head to her mother's for dinner, Olivia's phone buzzed with another text. This one was from an unknown number. Curious, she opened the message. Olivia, it's Connor. I know it's been years, and I have no right to contact you. But I saw the article about your work with the community health clinic. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. You've become the person I always knew you could be. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. Wishing you all the best, Connor. Olivia stared at the message, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. Anger, sadness, and surprisingly, a sense of closure. She thought about responding but decided against it. Some chapters were better left closed. Instead, she opened her photos and smiled at the most recent addition, a selfie with her boyfriend, Dr. Michael Chin, a dedicated ER physician she had met through her work with the community health clinic. His kindness, intelligence, and unwavering support had been a balm to her soul, helping her learn to trust and love again. As the taxi pulled up, Olivia made a decision. She forwarded Connor's message to Michael with a simple note, the past just reached out. But I'm looking forward to our future. Can't wait for our weekend getaway. Love you. Michael's response was almost immediate. The past made you who you are, but our future is what matters. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Love you too. Olivia smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She had faced her past, built a successful present, and was looking forward to a bright future. As the taxi wound its way through the Chicago streets towards her mother's house, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a starry-eyed girl dreaming of a fairy tale, to a woman who had found her own path and was making a real difference in the world. It hadn't been easy, but every struggle, every heartbreak, every triumph had shaped her into the person she was today. As the taxi pulled up to her mother's modest but welcoming home, Olivia saw Maria waiting on the porch, a warm smile on her face. The smell of her favorite childhood dishes wafted through the air, a reminder of the love and support that had been her constant through every up and down. Olivia stepped out of the taxi, her heart full. This was her happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending, but a real, messy, beautiful life filled with purpose, love, and the knowledge that she had stayed true to herself through it all. As she hugged her mother tightly, Olivia whispered, "I'm home, Mama. I'm finally home." And in that moment, surrounded by the love of her family, with a fulfilling career and a bright future ahead, Olivia knew that she had found something far more precious than any fairy tale could offer. She had found herself, and in doing so, had written her own story, one of resilience, integrity, and the power of staying true to one's values. The Chicago skyline glittered in the distance, a reminder of the world she had conquered. But here, in the warmth of her mother's embrace, Olivia Martinez knew that her greatest triumph was not in the boardrooms or the headlines, but in the love she had cultivated, the lives she had touched, and the woman she had become. As she followed her mother inside, the delicious aroma of home-cooked food enveloping her, Olivia smiled. This was her story, her journey, her triumph. And it was far from over. The future stretched out before her, full of promise and possibility. And Olivia was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that she had found her true happily ever after, not in a fairy tale romance, but in the beautiful, complex tapestry of a life well lived.